Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com, and we're back with this week's new comic book reviews. Once again, another big week. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Lots going on this week with comics, so let's get right to it. First off, we have DC Pride #1 with many creative teams. So we have the first story by James Tynion IV with artwork by Trung Le Nguyen. Then we have Steve Orlando writing with Stephen Byrne as the artist. Then we have Vaida Ilea as the writer and Skylar Partridge as the artist. Then we have Mariko Tamaki as the writer with Amy Reeder as the artist. Then we have Sam Johns as the writer with Klaus Janson doing the art. Danny Lohr is the writer. Then we have Lisa Sturell as the artist. We have Sienna Grace as the writer with Rose Stein and Ted Brandt as the artist. Nicole Maines with as the writer, Rachel Stott as the artist, and finally the story by the writer Andrew Wheeler with artwork by Luciano Vecchio. Pardon me. First of all, I want to say it's really great that both Marvel and DC and Image and other companies are actually acknowledging Pride Month of June. That's actually, I think, a really big step for the industry as a whole. And I think it's also great that in this case, DC's highlighting some of their LGBTQ characters and, pointing out that there's a wide variety of characters in the DC universe. First of all, once again, I think it's a good idea. I think I like these specials, and with the short stories and stuff, because I think you can actually do a lot with short stories. I think that this one, I think, was a bit underwhelming for me. I think the thing was that the stories was good. There were a few breakouts, but I think a lot of it it did just kind of like, I was just a bit underwhelmed. There were definitely, some that, really did stand out. We had the Batwoman by Tynion and Nguyen was actually really a good story. I really liked that one. I really enjoyed the artwork on that one. The Green Lantern, the Silver Age Green Lantern story was with Alan Scott was actually really, really good. The Tamaki and Reader, the Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy one was actually a lot of fun, and I really enjoy Amy Reeder's artwork on it. It's really wonderful. It's really just one of the really gorgeous ones. And then the Sienna Grace story was actually the Pied Piper story was actually really a big surprise. I think that was one of the biggest surprises of the book. There were also some really nice pinups. There's a really nice foreword by Mark Andreyko, who a few years ago did Love the Love is Love. That was co-published by DC and IDW that won many awards, including an Eisner Award. There was a really great anthology book out of the tragedy of the shooting in Florida at the nightclub. And the other nice thing was that in the back, they highlighted the LGBTQ characters that are on the CW shows. And they had interviews with some of the actors and actresses that was actually really nice. Like I said, I do think that there's definitely, this was good, and I think it's important. I think I just wasn't particularly, there were all the stories were good. There were a few that were really good, but I don't think there was any that really broke out and really, really brought something, interesting to the characters. The Alan Scott one was probably, I think, one of the more interesting ones because, he came out as gay in much later in life. So I think that's an interesting story, and that story does kind of deal with that, which is interesting. And once again, I go back to the Tamaki and Reader one. I mean, whenever you put Harley and Ivy together, it always just kind of creates a magic, and it's a really fun story. But the question comes down to, is it worth $10? And I think that's going to be kind of a more iffy proposition on this one, because there's only 7 stories in this, but there is a lot of like a supplementary material, and the pinups are really great and everything. So I think it's really going to be like, I don't know that it's hugely worth $10, but I think it's definitely worth checking out. Like I said, I'm a little bit torn on this one. I really wanted to like it more than I did, but I did like it. I just didn't quite love it as much as I had hoped I would. But once again, I still think it's a very important book. I think there's a really good market for stuff like this, not necessarily even just during Pride Month. So on that note, I think it's definitely, I think you should check it out at the very least. Next up, we have The Secret Land #1 by Christoph Emgard, as the writer, and Thomas Aria is the artist. This was actually kind of a really surprising book. What it is you have, it's roughly the end of World War II. The Nazis have been defeated, and so you have this a guy and a girl that meet. They're both in the army, and then they go off on their separate ways. He goes on a mission, she goes on a mission. So we go on his mission first, and they're fighting the Japanese because they have not surrendered yet. And he gets shot and everything, but the reason he kind of goes into the dangers because she's been it's been said that she's dead. She was killed in action. And so then, but you find out that she's actually still alive, and there's this secret base in the Antarctic that all the whatever's left of the Nazis have come there, and they're trying to restart the Nazi party. And it's really intriguing. Like, you don't really like see that, and it's like, whoa, that's actually a really good concept. Emgard, like I said, the script is actually really good. It really builds up really nicely. It doesn't get too bogged down with exposition, even though there's a lot of exposition. But he gives enough to the characters, and that kind of keeps the story moving. The artwork by Ari is actually really nice, because there's a lot of time, it's pretty much people talking. I mean, there's a little bit of action here and there, but it's mostly, people just talking. So, he does a really good job of like, making, basically what is somewhat, can be boring dialogue visually, interesting. And that's actually a big plus. Like I said, this was definitely a big surprise for me. And I really did enjoy like the concept and everything, and I think it'll be I'm really intrigued to see where they go with the second issue on this. Next up, we have 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton #1, written by Kyle Starks, with artwork by Chris Schweitzer. I'm a really big fan of Kyle Starks. I loved his Rock Candy Mountain book. That was really fabulous. This book is just the wildest thing I think I've ever seen. So what it is you have this actor. He is a complete and total asshole, and everybody hates him. And then he apparently commits suicide, but one of his sidekicks believes that he was murdered. So he goes, there's this kind of wake for all the sidekicks, and so you start hearing their story and how much they hate. Everybody hates this guy because he like one of the things that it opens and he like punches a stuntman in the face and like breaks his nose, and it's like the director's like, you can't keep punching them for real, and he's like, well, the viewers expect that. I mean, he's just a complete dick. And then you hear the stories of the sidekick of what he's done to them, and ultimately screwed them over. And you totally understand why. Okay, how has he been alive this long? Because everybody freaking hates him. I mean, everybody, sidekicks, directors, dude, everybody hates this guy. So you you have all these sidekicks, and one of them, one of the best ones, is one of the kid sidekicks that's grown up, and he has like pocket beer. So when he goes to the wake, he's like, pocket beer. And, well, you want a pocket beer? Because he just has beer on him, and it's just like the wildest thing. And so so there's that whole thing going, but then there's the whole, like, he's obviously been murdered. So who? I mean, everybody wants to kill him. So how do you find out? How do you whittle it down to like somebody who actually did kill him? And it's a great story. Stark really just nails this. And there's like ads you can send away for his Trigger Keaton's art, autograph and everything. Schweitzer's artwork is really, really nice. It has, it definitely has a kindred spirit to Stark's own artwork. But it really just, he captures like the humor, sometimes there's a lot of subtle humor, like, the pocket beer thing, he just makes it all work. It's a really great looking book. It has actually a nice cartoony style, which really fits the tone and the feel of the story. This book really knocked my socks off. I really enjoyed this book. I cannot wait and see where they take it. I mean, this first issue was amazing, and there's so much more to come that I can't recommend this one enough. Next up, we have Bunny Mask #1, written by Paul Tobin, with artwork by Andrea Muti. This was it's a good horror story, and what's interesting about it is Tobin, who is also the writer of Bandette. The Dark Horse has been releasing the volumes of those, and it's just, so what it is there's a girl that's in this, basically this guy's nuts, and he has apparently killed his wife and everything. So the social worker and a doctor go to visit the girl because they think that there's something wrong. He kills the social worker, and then the doctor, he like puts to work, and he's like digging in this tunnel because he hears voices and stuff. He's obviously lost his mind. And then when they break through to the cave, you find this like bunny creature, and it kills him. And then, well, he shoots a guy in the leg, and then, the bunny creature licks it, and then it's all better. And then the story goes forward, and the guy is reunited with the girl again, and she's like an artist, and she's been doing this creepy, bunny art. And so it kind of, then it goes back to, the sheriff trying to look into this because he knows there's something weird about this case, and they discover the tunnel, and it's really intriguing. There's a lot going on here, and it's really, I think the thing is that there's a little bit of blood, and it's kind of like there's some disturbing stuff, but it's definitely more of a darker, like kind of mystery. Like it's not, like a bloodbath or anything like that. I mean, there's some messed up visuals in there that I will not talk about. But it's just interesting because it's just really creepy, and it's unnerving, but like in a very methodical paced way that just works really, really well. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, the script is really good. Moody's artwork is really, really nice here. It has like a really gritty feel, and it really just adds to the mood and the flavor of like the darkness of the story. And I really enjoyed it. And I think, when you get to the end of the first issue, you're like, oh, okay, like, is this creature real? What's going on? Is it imagination? And it just, it really sets up an interesting concept. And I think it's worth, if you're a horror fan, it's definitely worth checking out. Next up, we have Freak Snow #1, written by Kevin Rotelli and Rob Cannon, with artwork by Rob Cannon. This is a really weird book. The best way I can describe it's kind of a stream of consciousness. It's about this guy who, has no friends or anything. His friends are an empty beer can and an old Transformer type toy. And he just imagines this like story. it's not that it kind of doesn't make sense, but then it's not, like I said, it's a stream of consciousness type thing where, he has conversations with an empty beer can and a toy, and it's just it's just weird. It's just really weird. I didn't hate it, and I didn't necessarily like it. It's interesting. It is a very, very weird book. It is certainly pretty far out there. Like I said, the story is, I wouldn't even necessarily call it much of a story. Like I said, it's more of a stream of consciousness. Cannon's artwork is actually pretty weird, but in a strange way, it really fits the story. It like I said, it's weird and bizarre, but it kind of makes sense in the story. I certainly, like if you see this at your comic shop, I would definitely look at it and see if it's visually something interesting, because I didn't, like I said, I didn't hate it or anything, but I really can't recommend it, unless you like see it. You really need to see it to kind of see if it's something you might, but it's really out there. Next up, we have Eve number 2, written by Victor Laval, with artwork by Joe Mi Going. And I'll be honest, I wasn't really overwhelmed with the first issue on this, because I felt it was just like AI, and it's like, it just like the exposition was kind of heavy, and it really didn't, for me, it didn't really tell much of a story. It was like, the first issue was such a setup that there was really nothing for me to grab onto. I will say that the second issue was a stark improvement over the first issue, in the sense of, we now understand, once again, it's another post-apocalyptic, it's a virus that's, killed the world, apparently the world's underwater, and now, everybody's turned into like these weird zombie monsters. Once again, I'll go back, the concept is certainly not original. The story has been, told many, many times before. I do think that this is an improvement, but I wouldn't say that I'm still overwhelmed with the book. I mean, I did like the second issue much more than I liked the first, but it's one of those things. There's really nothing here that I have not read before. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just like, okay, if you're going to do this, do something different. I mean, okay, we have the AI teddy bear robot, which is, something slightly different. But once again, we've seen that rough concept before. The artwork actually is a little bit better. It was a little less stiff than the first issue. I think it was maybe because there was a bit more movement in it. Overall, once again, it's okay. I wasn't particularly overwhelmed. Might give it another issue. We'll see what happens when the third issue comes out. Once again, kind of okay. Next up, we have The Good Asian number 2, written by Pornsak Pinshot, with artwork by Alexandre Tenevsky. I really, really like the first issue, and it was really dense setup. There's a lot of great things, but the thing I love about this is it just seeps with noir, which is really hard to do in a comic. And Pinshot does a really nice job with the script. There's so much characterization here. There's so much going on. There's a lot of spinning plates here, but he really keeps everything, he keeps all the plates spinning, where, the story is very linear, but there's a lot going on in the present, the past, and, and it all kind of collides together. And it's really an interesting story, and he really just we get to, there's some more characters introduced. We kind of get into this underworld of Chinatown, and it's just really amazing. I mean, I really love this story. Trenevsky's artwork is really just gorgeous, and he really captures like the feel of it. And I love the fact that it has a kind of a limited color palette that really just complements the line artwork just beautifully. This is a really good book, and I think it's actually, really timely in a lot of ways with all, sadly, all the Asian hate. And it really kind of, brings you to this other world in a way, even though it's in the past. I mean, it's ironic because it's set in the past, but it's really just as timely in the present as it is when the story takes place. If you haven't read the first issue, definitely check this book out. It's a real winner. Next up, we have Batman the Detective #3 by written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Andy Kubert. So in this issue, we get to learn the origin of Ducard that Bruce has met, obviously in the past. We knew from last issue. So we get his origin story of how him and Bruce met, and how in a lot of ways they're similar but different. I mean, like he's kind of an assassin for hire. Not necessarily always, but he's like, for hire for assassin to find out information, stuff like that. Where, Batman does the same thing, but he's not hired. So it's really interesting because in this story, Taylor is saying that Ducard actually helped train Bruce. So, it's something, kind of interesting, kind of a side story to where this is how he learned these things. And it's actually a really interesting story. And I like the fact that it's set in Europe, which is really, kind of different for a Batman story, which is kind of nice. It's not, Gotham where everything always takes place. And Taylor is just, once again, it's not that I'm necessarily blown away by this story, but it's really enjoyable and really just well written. And then, of course, you have Andy Kubert's artwork, which is just stunning. I mean, he is one of the best artists out there, and he really just brings just an amazing visual flair to this story, especially, with the whole European visuals and stuff like that. I mean, he really just gets to just go wild with the visuals, and it's a good, solid Batman story with fantastic artwork, and it's something kind of different. Even though it seems to be like a million Batman books every month, this one really kind of definitely stands out because it just kind of feels different. And I really do like that about it. Next up, we have Geiger #3, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Gary Frank. So this issue, we continue to learn, the origin about Geiger. We learn the fate of his family that he's been protecting, and we also learn about his first encounter with the King of Vegas and why the King of Vegas hates him so much. So now we know why. So we have that past story, but we also have the story of the two little girls that have escaped Las Vegas. And so those where this issue, where it's kind of where the past catches up with the present. And, once again, this is the third issue. So this is kind of exposition, kind of just continuing the story. It continues to be a good story. I've been really kind of surprised by this. I think the only complaint I kind of have is that, like, each issue is kind of like when you get done, you're like, I kind of want more. They seem like short because it's kind of like, once again, it's one of those monthly bursts, you're kind of like, you want more immediately. Johns is actually, this is actually like a really, decent concept. The story is actually good. I mean, you have Gary Frank's artwork, which is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, this is a really great looking book. And, once again, the story is intriguing. The art's great. It's well worth checking out. Next up, we have Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries #3, written by Ivan Cohen, with artwork by Dario Brazulla. So this issue, once again, each issue is going to be Batman and the Scooby Gang. So this one is Scooby and Ace the Bat Hound are judging a dog contest in Gotham. So they're the guest judges. And, once again, these are simple little stories. They're fun. It's a Scooby Gang. It's got Batman. You got Two-Face as the villain. It's just, these are fun books. I mean, it's one of those, there's not, it's not a deep story or anything like that, but it's just, I like books like this because they're, for me, they're kind of like palate cleansers. When you read so much stuff, there's something about, like, this is like a comfort food. Like, exactly what you're going to get, and it's just fun. It's like eating candy. It's just a blast while you're reading, and it's just fun. And Brazula captures that cartoon style of like, more of this. It definitely has more Scooby-Doo influence, visually, of the animated series. It's a great all ages book. I'm having a blast. It's great. If you have kids, it's great because it's good for you and they'll love it too. Next up, we have Joker number 4, written by James Tynion IV with artwork by Guillaume Marsh. And then there's the Punchline backup, written by Sam Johns and Tynion with artwork by Marika and Dolfo. This is really, this is, once again, we go back. This is Commissioner Gordon's story. And so this issue, Bane is coming after Joker. The mob's coming. Everybody wants Joker dead. Everybody, and Commissioner Gordon's been hired to kill him. So basically everybody's, trying to kill the Joker. So this issue, they are all converging on, the hideout. And so we get it to the point, there's a giant battle. Of course, Joker escapes and he takes Gordon with him. So now we're set up with, he's got Gordon again, kind of kidnapped. And we start learning kind of about the Joker wars, that maybe it wasn't actually the Joker that started everything. It appears that he might have not been the one that, gassed Arkham Asylum. So there's that story element that has come up. And I don't think you need to have necessarily read the Joker War. You just know that it happened. That's the only thing I might, that might throw some people off if they're just reading this and they haven't read that. But I don't think I don't think you're really missing anything. You just need to know that it happened. And they do, the way he writes it, you understand like what happened. Marsh's artwork, once again, continues to just be really nice and really great looking. The Punchline backup is just kind of okay. I never thought she was that great of a character. And, the story's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. Once again, I'll go back to, Indolfo's artwork is nice, but it's okay. I wouldn't be buying the book for that. I wouldn't buy a book that was just that, So for me, you're just buying it for the main, Commissioner Gordon story. It continues to be really a nice surprise because it is a Commissioner Gordon story. It has the Joker, but that's not really what it's about. Next up, we have Karmen number 4, written and drawn by Guillaume Marsh. So now Carmen is kind of somewhat the angel of death. That's the best way to describe it. So we also kind of learn now that she's like almost too good at her job. Like, she's supposed to just go down, get the people, bring them to the next, their next life. And yet she always tries to help the people. And in this case, the girl that has committed suicide, she's trying to help her finish her story, that she now learns about her ex-boyfriend, she thought was cheating on him. He wasn't, that they were friends, but, now, she finds out that he actually really loved her. So she's trying to like finish her, she wants to finish her story, but she's kind of a ghost, so she's learning all this. And it's just, it's like I said, at first, that first issue was kind of a TNA, issue and everything. But as it went along, there's a much deeper story. And that's been the real surprise about this book. I mean, we know that Marsh can draw. I mean, he's just a fantastic artist. And I mean, his stuff in Joker's is really good. And his stuff in Batman's been great. But this book is gorgeous. It is absolutely stunning looking. And yet, sure, there's the cheesecake aspect, to it, because, she's kind of, naked through a lot of it. But there's so much, there's a really great story there. And that has been the real surprise. I mean, it wasn't just a, cheesecake. I mean, there's visually that element, but there's a much deeper story. And each issue just keeps getting better and better. And I'm really intrigued to see where this all goes to. I just am really loving it. I'm really loving it a lot. And it's just been a really wonderful book. Next up, we have Proctor Valley Road, number 4, written by Alex Child and Grant Morrison with artwork by Naomi Franquiz. This has been a really interesting story because apparently I think I said it about the last few issues. Apparently, it's based on a urban legend in San Diego about this haunted road, Proctor Valley Road. So the girl initially took these guys out. They've been taken by, a spirit, demon, whatever you want to call it. And one of them in the last issue, one of them came back. One of them's dead, but there's still two left. The girls have been accused of murdering him because they took him out. So they're trying to like find the other two so they can, save them and clear their name. That's what they're trying to do. So in this issue, they there was the principal went out to Proctor Valley Road. He got all messed up. He's in the mental, he's in the crazy house. So they go there to try to talk to him. They talk to these other girls that have, encountered, the spirit and everything. They have a Ouija board. So the girls get a Ouija board. They go to this bakery where this guy has supposedly killed his wife. They bring him, they call his spirit. They say, hey, we're looking for these two guys. Do you know them if they're dead? And he's like, we don't know these guys. And so then the evil spirit, tries to kill them and they get away. So it's kind of setting up to, a big payoff with them, attempting to rescue the two other boys and trying to, and the spirit's also like possessing the girls and trying to kill them at the same time. So there's all this crazy insanity going on. And, Child and Morrison have really come up with an interesting story. And I think the thing is that you really care about the girls. They're kind of a pain in the ass and they're all, kind of idiots because they're young girls. We were all dumb and stupid at that age, but there's this pressure that they're all under, and it comes to at the end of this issue, there's a real breaking point in the group, and it's just it'll be really interesting to see how it kind of all comes to a head, and are they able to fix or somewhat fix everything. Franquiz's artwork continues to really, I really like it. It has a bit of a cartoony look, which I enjoy, and I think it really fits the tone of the story because there's a lot of kind of goofy stuff in there. But it's been a really good story with really nice artwork, and I still think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Black Hammer Visions #5, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork by Leonardo Romero. They've done some books at Marvel. That's probably where Kelly's been writing a lot of books over there. And Romero, they've worked together before. This is a really great Skull-Digger story. Once again, with the Black Hammer Visions, you don't really need to know any of the characters or anything. These are just spotlights on characters that these creators have decided to spotlight. This one is Gold Digger, and the best way to describe it, it's basically a Batman Catwoman story. That's really the best way to describe this story, is that way, because Skull Digger is trying to there's this, the Catwoman character is basically a thief, and she, he comes across her stealing a jewel, and they kind of do the whole cat and mouse thing, and then she says, hey, I have, she's basically going after this one person and their industries and stuff like that. And so she goes to him and says, hey, there's this job, it's a two-person job, I need you. And it's like a gala party. The bad guy shows up, and I don't want to spoil it. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's actually a really touching story, and that's what's been really interesting about these Black Hammer Visions is they're not necessarily just like, oh, look, it's a superhero story. There's a lot of thought in doing, they're kind of somewhat short stories because they're single issue stories. So, but you have to do it all in one issue. There's no continuing issue. And Thompson really nails it here. She really captures the emotions of these characters in the story just perfectly. And I really, really loved it. And Romero's artwork is just really fabulous. I mean, the way that he draws everything out, and just the the layouts and the emotions, it's really a great looking book. And once again, these are standalone issues. You can buy this, read it by itself. You don't have to read any of the other issues. I'm a big Black Hammer fan, and these Vision stories have been absolutely just top notch, great creative teams, wonderful stories. And I like the fact that they're doing, kind of the side characters and stuff. There's only been one or two with like major, the main Black Hammer group or, team. So I highly recommend this book. I'm really enjoying it a lot. Next up, we have Space Bastards number 6. Written by Eric Peterson and Joe Aubrey. And this issue, the artwork is by Simon Bisley. This is actually a really interesting issue because it still has to do with the Intergalactic Postal Service, but it's kind of a side story about a guy who basically, he's in an AA meeting, and he's recounting his life of just effing everything up, drinking, drugs, just everything. And then, when he hits his bottom, they send him to this, nut house, basically the space nut house. And it's the wildest story I have ever seen. Derek Robinson had been drawing the previous issues, and Bisley was so perfect for this because it's like it's a visual acid trip. And I can't imagine anybody else doing the artwork on this. I mean, I love Derek Robertson, but Simon Bisley was perfect because it's just visually like a mind F, and it's just absolutely amazing, the story. And the story is actually weirdly touching in like kind of a total messed up way. Aubrey and Peterson just really, I like, this is almost like a little side story, and I really enjoyed that. I've really been really pleasantly surprised by this book. It just continues to like really take it in directions that just like, I mean, it's always crazy and effed up, but this was really, really like really offbeat, and it really was a good issue. I really, really enjoyed it like a lot. Next up, we have Wonder Woman 773. Written by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan, with artwork by Travis Moorer. And then there's the Young Diana backup by Jordi Belair, and artwork by Paulina Genshu. We're still in the Valhalla, storyline. This is still continuing. Once again, we're in the continuing story arc. So you have to have definitely read the past, 4 chapters to understand what's going on. So don't jump in at this point. But I'm really impressed with Conrad and Cloonan. I really like that they're taking this time with this story. It's a really deep story, and they're letting it unfold. Now, that isn't necessarily great for people jumping in. You should have jumped in when I told you, when the first issue, or the first issue of the story arc came out. But she finally, Wonder Woman meets up with the Valkyries. There's this great fight with Thor that is just freaking hilarious. She takes Thor to the mat, and he doesn't win, sadly. But I won't spoil how she kind of beats him. It's pretty hilarious. And so now we should be coming. It looks like we're coming to like the end of this first story arc. And I really have to say I've really enjoyed it because it's steeped in mythology, not necessarily just Greek mythology, but there's the whole Asgard, Thor, not Marvel Thor, but those are, legends, that's a mythology that existed, beyond what Marvel did with Thor. And I really like how they're taking these multiple mythologies and kind of molding it into this wild story. And Travis Moore just continues to visually just make this book rock. It's just, he really just has a great style. He captures like the emotions so well. And it's a really gorgeous looking book. I've really been enjoying it. I really can't wait to see where this first storyline goes. And, once again, I really like the Bel Air and Ganshu's, young Diana story. It just doesn't fit with the main story. It's a real shame. I really like it, and I think it's a really good story. I think I'm enjoying it, but it's so different from the main story that it's awkward. It really is awkward. I think what I'm probably going to do is, when that first story arc is over for the young Diana, is go back and just read it by itself, ignore like the main story, and just kind of read it, because I think it's not paired well, and that it's really unfortunate, because it's a really, the artwork's wonderful, the story's good, but it's not paired well. And finally, we have Roshack #9, written by Tom King with artwork by George Fornes. This continues to be, it's a detective story. It really is. I mean, that's what's interesting. So the detective is it's interesting because he's in the present. We have flashbacks to the past with Rorschach and the girl, because they're setting up for the assassination. And yet this issue, King does a really intriguing thing where the detective is actually talking to the past. Like, they're actually talking, and it's wild. This book continues. I mean, Tom King is just, he's really an amazing writer, because, once again, these characters are so ingrained in us because of the original Watchmen series by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, that, personally, I don't think they're sacred in the sense of, I think there should be an opportunity to do these characters, but do them, make your own spin on them. And in this case, it's not Rorschach. It's a person playing Rorschach. But yet it's so much more than that. It's very much Watchmen, but not at the same time. The best way to, kind of describe it's a very much like the Damon Lindelof HBO Watchmen series. It's Watchmen, but it's not. It's on its own. It's doing its own thing, and that's what King is doing here. And Fornes continues to just blow me away with his artwork on this book, and it's visually just it's stunning. It really is stunning, because a lot of it is just people, talking and stuff. I mean, it's not, there's not, spaceships and aliens and all, squids flying around or anything like that. It's just, it's a detective book, and yet he visually just brings it to life, and it just continues to impress me. And I'm loving this book. I really, really love this book. That's going to do it for this week. Once again, a little bit long. Sorry, folks. We're trying to get through them, but I want to make sure that I give you enough to whether, once again, is it worth your time and money, or is it just to skip it? So, that's what we try to do here. Once again, public service announcement, support your local comic shop. I get mine at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach. Ryan and Annie were in a great store there. They have a great subscription service, so you don't miss any issues. They offer trades and graphic novels for 30% off. It's a great store. And they also have a sister store in Culver City, Pulp Fiction Comics Culver City, run by Chris and her team. Great store. Once again, they offer discounts on subscriptions and their trades and graphic novels too. If you're in the LA area, both stores are really, really good. I mean, I obviously, live in Long Beach, so I go to the Long Beach store, but it's really good stuff, and I highly recommend, support your local comic shop. That's a really important thing. Once again, be safe out there. Wear your mask. I'm fully vaccinated, still wear my mask. Make sure you get vaccinated if you're able to. It's really important. We're doing really well, and let's continue to keep doing well. And finally, once again, we always say, please be kind to each other out there. There's a lot of rough stuff going on. People are having ups and downs. I get it. But being kind is free, and it's a good thing. So that's going to do it for this show. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves. Bye.